What is up? What is up, podcast family? Hello, Pop Fam. Welcome back to another episode of the Pour Over Podcast. Hi, hello. My name is Kyla. If you are new to the podcast, I just want to take a moment to welcome you. Thank you so much for clicking on this episode and for hopefully joining me on this journey that I'm on with all of you guys. This podcast is really just a place for believers to come and be poured into so we can go out and pour into others and learn how to be better disciples and make disciples as well, because that is exactly what we are called to do. I post episodes every Tuesday and we kind of talk about kind of everything on this podcast, really. We've covered so many different things. We've covered some story times from things that I've experienced, um, lessons in singleness and in ministry. We kind of chit chat about everything here. We're a very casual place, just a casual bestie hangout, sort of. But like I said, I am so grateful that you clicked on this episode. Every time someone talks to me about the podcast, my whole face just lights up because it's so much fun and I love doing this. I love sharing with you what the Lord puts on my heart and what I've experienced, what I've walked through, and some lessons that I've learned. I am still very much growing in so many ways. God is so good to me and He's been so faithful in my life. But I really just love getting to share with you guys kind of everything going on and things that I've learned and even things that I have going on in my life right now. I will say my life is very crazy right now. Very crazy, very hectic. That's why I haven't been posting full videos on YouTube, at least ones where you can like see me talking. You can still hear the episode on YouTube, but you can't necessarily watch it. And that's because I only get a little bit of time to record right now. I am actually recording this before I'm getting ready to work on some stuff for youth ministry. And I literally just got home from work. So I'm just out here doing my best. I'm just doing my best. But like I said, I'm so grateful that you clicked on this episode. If you are not new to the podcast, thank you so much for joining me for another episode. I am very, very excited to get into today's topic. Today, we are talking about 5 leadership truths that I have learned. Now, I just want to share a little bit of my backstory, kind of, and my experience in leadership. I've kind of always tried to take a leadership role in whatever it is that I've done. I was the dance captain for my high school dance team. I was yearbook editor and president for almost my entire high school experience. And then right out of high school, I started college classes while doing the internship at my church. And then also right out of high school, I started leading in youth ministry, which I have been doing ever since. I've led a serve team, I've led small groups, I've dealt with deadlines. I kind of feel like at this point I've done all the things, but at the same time, I also know that in a sense my leadership journey is really only beginning. I mean, I'm only 22 and I'm really committed to ministry. It's kind of my life. So I know that I still have a lot to learn and a long way to go, but I have learned a few things. So I really just want to share those things with you that I have taken away from the different experiences that I've had. You know, maybe you're listening to this and you're in ministry or you're thinking about starting a small group of your own. Maybe you're thinking about applying for that promotion or that internship or the highest position in your favorite club. And really, leadership kind of goes into all of that. And there's a lot that you can and will learn. And sometimes, not sometimes actually, all the time, anytime you're in ministry, it really does help to hear from someone who has a little bit of experience, who can say that maybe they haven't necessarily exactly been in your shoes in your exact situation, but they do have leadership experience and there are things that they've learned. And I know for me, that's been a huge part of me growing in my leadership is listening to the people who lead me personally or in ministry or in my job. You know, it's so important to have mentors, and I think I will get into that later on in the episode. But today, I really just want to take a moment to share some of the things that I've learned as a leader. I've definitely come a long way. since my high school years of being yearbook editor or dance captain. I've come a long way since then, and I've definitely made some mistakes. I do also want to kind of preface the episode with that. It's a journey, and leadership is not, even if it's something that kind of comes naturally to you, there's still going to be times when you make mistakes. There's still going to be times when you mess up. And that's just a part of the learning process. I mean, if you started out knowing absolutely everything, then you would never grow. But it is a growth journey and it is a process. And there is always more that you can learn and more that you can do. So I'm just here sharing some things that I've learned in this journey. I mean, I've been in youth ministry for I think almost 6 years now, and it's taught me so much. It's been probably the most life-changing experience that I've had. So, I just really want to share with you guys, some things that I've learned along this journey of leadership. So, without further ado, without any more introduction, let's get into 5 leadership truths that I have learned. Alrighty. The first leadership rule that I have learned is consistency is crucial. Really, whatever leadership role you are wanting to step into, whether it's being president of a club or maybe even a small group leader, whatever it is, you have to be consistent. You absolutely have to be consistent. But more than likely, whoever is the word oversight? I think that's the right word. Whoever is your oversight, whoever is the person that's already leading you in the spot that you're in right now, they more than likely won't even consider you for like more leadership roles or a higher position if you're not already consistent. I think that's so important that you show that you can be consistent now with what you've already been given before you think about asking for more. I think that's really key to really growing in leadership at all, taking any form of leadership role on, whether you're already in it or you're just asking for more, or it's your first time stepping into a leadership role. You kind of have to start out at the bottom and show that you can be consistent with that. And then that's what will happen before you even get considered for something more. You know, the whoever is your leader is going to want to see that you're consistent with what you've already been given. But I think it's just so important that if you do wanna take on more, you have to be committed, you have to be consistent, because, it would be weird and confusing if you showed up to lead a group of people and you announced yourself as their leader, and then you only showed up, like, half the time, Like, if you didn't do the consistent work yourself or if you popped in and out of their lives, that would just be weird and that wouldn't show that you were really in this for the long haul. And if you really want to make an impact, if you really want to do well with more, then you have to be consistent. You really have to be consistent. And sometimes that looks like showing up for team meetings, chiming in and actually having an opinion or something to say so that the people on your team know that you really do care about what's going on. You're just not waiting around for someone else to make a decision. You want to have some input because you do have an opinion and you do really care about it. That can look like checking in with the people that you're leading and showing them that you are going to be there for them, that you are committed, no matter how tiring it gets. Because the truth is, like, yeah, because consistency takes work, especially if it's something new to you. You have to build that into your schedule. You have to build that into really your day-to-day life or even your weekly life. You have to work that in, and so it can take a lot. It does get kind of tiring, but in my experience, it's really so much easier to build trust with the people that you're leading when you're committed and when they see that you are someone who is invested in going to stick around. It takes a lot of dedication, and I think it more takes a lot of intention, right? You can't be consistent with something right off the bat, like the first time you do it. It takes honestly building a habit just like anything else. You just have to be consistent with it and do it at the same time every day or the same week every week, at the same part of your week. It just takes a matter of really building that habit and working it into your life and showing up every day or every week and saying, no matter how exhausting it gets, no matter what I need to move around in my schedule. I'm committed to this and I know that I said I wanted to take this on, so I'm going to show up. So, the first leadership truth that I have learned is that consistency is crucial. Okay, the next leadership truth that I have learned is you will never reach your cap. When you're taking on a leadership role, your growth shouldn't stop when you get that role or that title. Your goal as a leader should be to continue growing because there's always some way that you can improve, some way that you can lead better. There's always going to be more that you can learn. So maybe you've been in this role that you're in for a little bit and you're thinking, you know what? I'm doing pretty well. My team's on fire. Our group is growing and thriving. I think we just coast and we kick up our feet. My work here must be done. I honestly think I'm as good of a leader as it gets. But the truth is, there is always a way that you can get better. Whether it's in this specific role and group or even personally, you should always be looking for ways to grow. And that can look like reading books on leadership. That's one of my favorite things to do. I'm a huge reader. Maybe going to a leadership conference, listening to podcasts. If you need recommendations for a podcast, obviously, I would promote this one, but there's so many out there that are really good. I would love to recommend some. So if you are looking for a really good leadership podcast, I have plenty that I could recommend to you. You can always shoot me a message on Instagram or even just comment. I would love to help you out with that. But it can also look like just spending time with your own leaders and mentors and getting their thoughts and perspectives on how you can grow. I really do think that it's important that we check in with the people who are leading us and we ask them, like, how do you think I'm doing? How can I improve? And what do you see as my strengths and weaknesses? Because if they are leading us, chances are they've been in it a little bit longer than we have and they have experience. They have the things that they've walked through and maybe we're going through that right now. It really doesn't hurt to check in with the people that are already leading you and asking them for feedback, asking them how you can grow because that is how you get better. And also checking in with the people that you're leading. Sometimes as leaders, we think that it's kind of like exposing ourselves or makes us look insecure if we ask the people that we're leading how we're doing. But I don't think that's a sign of insecurity. I think that's a sign of humility and honestly, just having a good perspective of what kind of a leader you are and what you think God is calling you to because God is always going to call you to something more, to something higher. He has better for you. He has ways that you can grow. And so I think that if you're in a leadership position and you ask the people that you're leading about their takes on how you're leading them and what you can do better to serve them, because leadership really is about serving others. It's not about a title. It's not about a promotion. It's not about promoting ourselves or gaining a platform. It's about what we can do for others and how we can really best serve other people. But just checking in with the people that you're leading and saying, what do you need from me? Just as an example, I think it had to have been like a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month or so ago, but I messaged some of the leaders that I'm kind of a coach for, and I asked them how I could pray for them and what they needed from me. And I reassured them like, hey, if you need anything from me, I'm here. I'm not just here to ask you to send reminders to kids. I'm not just here to tell you what the small group questions are. I'm here to help lead you and guide you. And I'm not saying that I have to be your closest mentor, that I'm the only one you can come to for advice, but I do just want you to know that you can come to me if you need advice. And if you do need prayer, that's what I'm here for. And that's really, I think, a huge deal. And on the flip side too, I've had leaders in my life do that for me. Even my boss, I think maybe a couple of months ago, she checked in with every single employee and she had a one-on-one meeting with them and she asked them how they thought she was doing, what her strengths were, what her weaknesses were, and what area they thought she could improve in. And I told her in our one-on-one conversation, I said, I think this is such a good example of leadership. And I don't even know if you see what a good example of leadership that is and how big of a deal this really is that you're doing this, but this is a phenomenal sign of leadership. Like being able to humble yourself and understanding that you still have areas you can grow in and that, there's always a way that you can serve people better and being able to actually ask for feedback, not just asking the Lord, to make you better, but actually asking the people that you're serving with and for and alongside and the people that you're leading how they think you can grow, and not to open it up for criticism in a sense of where they cut you down, but really go to people that you trust and whose opinions you know that you can trust and rely on and ask them for their own feedback. So I think just another leadership truth that I have learned is knowing that you really should never reach your cap. All right. The next leadership truth that I have learned, this is a big one. Number 3 is stop looking at sacrifice as a loss. Like I said, this is a big one for me. The truth is, if you really want to be in leadership, you're going to learn this. Leadership takes sacrifice. I'll just use my life as an example because that's easy, right? Because I know my life pretty well. So just using my life as an example, I have a full-time job. I work Monday through Friday, 7:30 to about 3:45 every day. So I have a full-time job with a lot of responsibility. I have the podcast, I have my own personal life, but I also have students that I lead, which means that I am constantly sending texts, checking in on them, praying over them, asking them how they're doing, what I can do for them, how they're doing in school. I'm sending them reminders. I'm going to students' games and picking them up for youth and then taking them home from youth. And I have conferences to plan and execute. And I have meetings to attend. I have contact information I need to make sure that I have saved. I have parents that I reach out to. I have unplanned, really long conversations with students who need it. And the truth is, it's a lot. It is a lot. To be truly committed means you're going to have to sacrifice. You will sacrifice your time, your energy, your money sometimes. If you've ever been in youth ministry, you know that kids love Jack in the Box and they love pizza. And you will sacrifice a lot of your emotions. You will be required to sacrifice a lot in leadership. But I want you to understand that doesn't mean it's a loss. When you learn how to sacrifice for someone else, you actually end up gaining so much. I have people who look at me and what my schedule looks like, and they look at how dedicated I am to my students and to the youth ministry, and they tell me, you're such a good person. I don't know how you do it. Youth takes up so much of your time. You give up so much for these kids. But the truth is, I really started to experience so much more breakthrough when I was willing to sacrifice my time for others. It doesn't leave me always feeling empty. A lot of the time, I feel so fulfilled. So I don't always feel the effects of the sacrifice. Sometimes I do. It does get to me occasionally when I'm in a really busy season, kind of like where I'm at right now. I have a lot going on in my life, kind of like what I shared in the beginning. And so sometimes it does take a little bit more out of me. And I do start to feel the effects of what I'm giving up and what I'm doing and how involved I am. But it has taught me so much. I'm telling you, once I learned how to sacrifice my time to go to a student's game, or to drive them places, or to spend an extra 20 minutes having that conversation because I can tell something's off with them, I started feeling so much more not just proud of how I'm leading people, but I really started to feel like that was how I was making a difference. That's when I started to experience so much more growth and really depth in my leadership. Yes, it does take a lot out of you to show up week after week, but you're really just kind of giving up your time at that point, and if you're good at scheduling and organizing, that's not that big of a sacrifice. But if you want to experience depth in your leadership and you want to build a connection with the people that you're leading and a connection with the team that you're leading with, you have got to learn how to sacrifice. You have to learn how to give some things up. And maybe you're looking at your schedule and you're thinking, I really don't have the time, Kyla. I don't have the time. I'm going to tell you right now, you probably do, and you just don't realize it. And I'm saying that because that's a lesson that I had to learn very early on in youth ministry. I had a conversation with a really close mentor of mine very early on when I started youth ministry, and I just kept saying, I'm so busy. I'm so busy. I just don't have the time. And then we actually we sat down and looked at my day-to-day schedule, and we realized I have so much more time than I thought. And now that I look at my schedule literally weekly, every single week, I plan my days literally day to day. I have a daily to-do list and checklist, a full agenda that I have in my notes app that I look at throughout the day, every single week. But now that I am more organized and I really am better at dispersing things in my schedule that I need to get done, I see I have so much more time than I thought. A lot of us we think, well, there's no way that I could possibly have time to do that extra thing for that person. But what if that thing takes like 20 minutes? Are you really telling me that you don't have an extra 20 minutes in your day at all, ever, for you to do that extra thing that would just make that person feel seen and heard and cared about? So I realized that if I was going to experience depth and connection and real growth in my leadership, I was going to have to sacrifice. But I started to gain so much more from leadership when I stopped looking at sacrifice as a loss. Okay, moving right along, we're getting through these things pretty quickly. I hope you guys are feeling good. I hope that you are already taking something away from this episode. These are reminders that I need sometimes and just some real truths that I need to remind myself of sometimes. So I hope that you are enjoying this episode. Moving right along, the fourth leadership truth that I have learned is sometimes you have to be the bad guy. Sometimes you have to be the bad guy. And this is the hard part. Listen, with me, I love taking my students to Canes, partially because I love Canes. I love jamming with them in the car. I love listening to the boy drama. I love worshiping with them. I love seeing them grow. I love laughing with them and having inside jokes with them. But sometimes I know I have to be the bad guy. Sometimes I have to be the one that puts my foot down and tells them to get off their phones during the message, the one that tells them that their shorts are a little too short for a church event. And sometimes I have to be the one who tells them that they can't completely write off their parents when they make them mad or when they disagree. And for some of us, it's really hard to correct other people. It's probably especially hard if you don't take correction well. If you don't take correction well, I have an episode on that in season 1. Just a quick little plug and promotion. If you do struggle with correction, highly recommend listening to that episode. I don't remember exactly which episode it is, but I know it's in season 1. So can't be too far back. So go ahead, check that out. But for some of us, it's really hard for us to correct someone, especially when we fear ruining our established relationship with that person, or we fear coming across as too harsh. But sometimes you really do have to step in, especially in youth ministry. You see how these kids have a lot to learn still. But really, in any leadership role, sometimes you're going to have to speak up. And maybe that person that you're thinking about right now hasn't been showing up to meetings, so they're missing out on crucial information. Maybe they're not responding to messages and you don't even know if they're checked in at all. Maybe they're completely checked out. Maybe that person that was supposed to get something done by a certain deadline that had plenty of time to get it done still didn't meet that deadline. And now it's putting the team behind. Maybe someone who was responsible for communicating very important information didn't do that. And so now there's a whole group of people who are missing out. Maybe someone that you serve or lead or work with is making some pretty bad decisions and you see that they're really not in a healthy place and you feel like you have to be the one step in and ask if maybe they need to take a step back or step down from what it is they're doing. It can be really hard to do that because nobody wants to be that person. I mean, some people are more confrontational than others. I've definitely learned to be a little bit more confrontational, mostly because I learned how to stop people pleasing. And I also learned how to be more confident in myself. And I also learned how to communicate better. I think that makes a huge difference in confronting someone, whether it's a big thing or a small thing. Your communication style and how you communicate that confrontation makes a huge difference in your level of confidence and comfortability doing that. But nobody really wants to be the bad guy. Like, unless you're in a really bad mood and you're kind of looking to start a fight, nobody wants to be that person that says, like, hey, you really need to not do that. Or, hey, are you really checked in at all? Like, what happened with this? We gave you this responsibility. What's going on? Why aren't you showing up? Why aren't you communicating? Is there something I can do? Sometimes you really just have to be the bad guy, but being the bad guy doesn't always look like being mean. A great way to get to understand where someone's at and why they might be struggling is to just approach them with a, hey, are you okay? Is there anything I can take on for you? What do you need from me in order to make things easier for you? Maybe someone is trying to get all the things done and they're kind of struggling because they have a lot going on personally and they have a lot going on professionally. And maybe they're not able to have a single free moment to themselves. And so maybe they're just waiting for someone to ask if they need help. So sometimes being the bad guy looks like just offering a helping hand, and then you're not really the bad guy. You're just trying to see things from their perspective and you're just trying to kind of carry that weight with them. But at other times, people really do need correction. And that's a huge part of leadership. You can't let people just get away with whatever. That's not how they grow. I'm sure in your leadership experience that someone has done the hard thing and come up to you and said, hey, you're not really strong in this area, or I can really see how you could improve here, or hey, this is kind of falling short and you're kind of falling behind in this. What's going on? You really need to step this up because people are relying on you. And I'm sure that conversation made you better. Maybe it wasn't easy for you to hear, but it did make you better. It made you a better leader. It made you a leader, period, right? Because you can't expect to lead people if you never get correction, if you never grow, like we already talked about. So sometimes you really just have to take a deep breath and kind of get the guts to really step in and say something. And people need to be led and people want to be led. Sometimes people don't know that they're not strong in an area until you tell them. And every so often someone will actually be grateful that you corrected them or that you showed them how they could improve or how they could grow or be better, because people want to grow. They want to get better. They want to continue to learn, but if no one's telling them what their strengths and weaknesses are, how are they supposed to know? How are they supposed to grow at all and learn and get better if no one's correcting them and telling them how they can improve? So, another leadership truth that I have learned is that sometimes you have to be a bad guy. Things can't always be sunshine and rainbows, and you might not always agree with people, but really, truly, sometimes you just have to step in and say something and be the bad guy. Okay, we are at about 30 minutes, which I think is perfect. And I do just want to get into the last leadership rule that I'm going to share, which is zeal fades. Zeal fades. And this is something I actually was recently discussing with a really close mentor of mine. The truth is, you can step into a leadership role with a lot of excitement and a lot of ideas. You can come in hot thinking of all the ways you're going to make a difference, how you've got this cool title now. So now you can finally make things happen. You can have your say so, and everything's going to get 10 times better because you're a part of it now. And it's really great to go into things with excitement. You should never enter something if you're not feeling like this is where you're meant to be. If you don't have fresh vision and ideas. So it's great to go into things with excitement. But you just have to understand that your zeal, your passion, it's going to fade. The longer you stick around, the more that you will see that sometimes you have to be the bad guy. Sometimes you have to sacrifice things in your life and you don't always get your way. And leadership really is a continuous growing process. You've got to show up week after week after week. And that can start to become a lot. And so your zeal might fade. But I want you to understand that it's not zeal that keeps you going, it's purpose. It's knowing that God still wants you there, wherever you are, whether it's ministry or a job, whatever it might be in, knowing that God wants you there, that His plan for you in that role isn't finished yet. It's not completed yet. There's still more that God wants to do in and through you with this leadership role that you're in. So, yes, the longer you stick around, the more you're going to kind of see the dark underbelly of things. And not to say that in a way where it's like, ooh, everything's being exposed. It's some crazy scandalous thing. Like, no, you just start to see the real side of things. It's easy to look at things before you've joined them. It's easy to look at a group or a ministry or a team and see how they just kind of make things happen. But then when you actually join the team, you realize it takes a lot more work than you thought. And that's when it starts to take more out of you because it's requiring more of you than just passion and ideas. is requiring your time and your energy. And, we already talked about what you might have to sacrifice. And so, that zeal might start to fade and you might start to get a little tired. And maybe that's when you start to wonder if what you're doing is still meant for you. And that's really when you've just got to go to God, when you have to ask Him for direction. And He will show you if you need to move on or if you're meant to stay right where you're at. Like I said, I'm going into my 6th year of youth ministry, and there have been a lot of times when I thought, man, it would be nice to have Mondays and Wednesday nights to myself. It would be nice to not have to block out the whole month of February for our conference. It would be nice to give myself some downtime just to breathe. But every single time I thought that, God has clearly and evidently shown me that I am meant to stay put. And he has honestly been so right. Year after year, I just find myself loving youth ministry more and more. And, I continue to grow. I continue to learn and I continue to experience a deeper level of his purpose for me more and more. And I'm so glad that I didn't give up when my zeal faded. You know, if I'm being honest, there have been times when I have shown up to youth completely depressed. There have been times when I've shown up to a meeting and I have not been in a good place and I've been fighting back tears. And there have been times when I've had a rough week and I am just exhausted and I feel like I have nothing to give. And there have been times when I have to deal with a really difficult situation and there's a lot of pressure and a lot's being expected of me and I'm just not feeling it. But honestly, the truth is zeal will fade, yes, but it can also come back. Passion and drive comes and goes. So maybe right now you're not necessarily in a spot where you're really feeling the passion a whole lot, but maybe that is just for a season. Who knows? In a month, everything could come flooding right back. Like you could have a fresh renewal of ideas and drive, so you've really got to just kind of stick it out and you just got to lean on God and to know that yeah, sometimes zeal fades, but on the other side, it can also come right back. You kind of just have to dig in right where you're at and that's really why you can't just rely on your emotions and even on your thoughts because maybe there is a good amount of time where you're questioning is this still for me, but that's when you have to really rely on the Lord and just continue to seek Him more and more and understand that it's not about what you're feeling or what you're thinking. It's really about what God has planned for you and where He wants you. And like I said, in my experience, God has been so good. Every time I've thought about quitting and being done with it, He's called me back to it. And I actually had like a running joke because people have asked me, how long are you going to stick around? Because really, I feel like at the point where I'm at now, it's like people are almost expecting me to like commit my life to it, and I'm really not too sure about that, but um people have really kind of just expected me to step out and be like, yeah, I'm going to do youth ministry for the rest of my life. And I think that's just because I am so committed and I love it so much and I've been doing it for a little while now, but I've had my moments where I'm like, I don't know. I really am kind of like done with this, but every single time God has been so good to call me back and I tell people that. I'm like, every time I think I'm gonna quit, God's like, "Nope, not done with you yet." But I'm so thankful for that. I'm so thankful that I didn't just rely on my feelings or my thoughts or what I even felt was right for me because I mean, yeah, it would be easy for me to look at it and be like, "Yeah, I really don't have that much free time and I really do give a lot." And so it would be good for me to take a step back and maybe think more about where else I want to serve or where else I can lead. But that's not what God wants for me and that's not where God wants me. And I've been able to grow so much and learn so much and really just see a transformation in myself because I've stuck it out. And it's not about sticking it out because your best friend is in it too. That's another thing. Like zeal and passion and ideas will come and go, but so will people. And this is kind of like hard to explain in a sense, but I don't think that I'll put it like this. If you are in this leadership role only because someone else is too, you will probably not last for very long because chances are that person is not going to stick it out. They're going to move on. They're going to do something different with their lives. And if you are like, oh, well, they're dipping, must be my time. If they're not going to show up, then I'm definitely not going to do it because I can't do it without them, or I don't want to do it without them. That's where you kind of got to reassess your intentions and why you really stepped into this leadership role in the first place. I've had plenty of friends come and go from leadership roles that I've been involved in. And, yeah, it's been hard because I would love to just do everything with my friends, but it's not about my friends. It's not about who's in it. It's not about my feelings. It's really about what God has planned for me. And so, yeah, just another leadership truth that I've learned is that zeal will fade. Zeal will fade, and your drive will fade, and there will be times in your leadership where you're just drained and exhausted and you're like, I can't do this anymore. But thank goodness that we don't have to rely on ourselves. And that's really kind of like the last point I want to get into. It's not really a leadership truth, but it's more just something I want to add. Is that you can't do this all alone. You have to have people you can lean on in this leadership role that you're in, whatever it is. Maybe that's a mentor who has been exactly where you're at. Maybe it's your team, maybe it's someone who's been in your shoes and has previous leadership experience. Every leader needs an outlet. Someone that you can go to when you're struggling, when you need help carrying some of the burden that you're carrying in this specific leadership role. And that can even just look like asking someone to pray for you, or maybe even delegating or asking questions so you can relieve some of that pressure or clear up any confusion that you might have. But really, also, you have to understand that you need to ask the Lord to guide you. You are not going to be able to do this all on your own. You just can't. There have been so many moments when I've had to ask God to guide my words before I go into a difficult conversation, or where I've had to ask Him to give me peace in a stressful moment, or where I've had to ask Him to show me how I should proceed, or what my attitude should be, or how I should think about things, or who I should go to. And I really do think it's so imperative to find people in your life that you can lean on, and to know that you can lean on the Lord as you're in this role. Like, you can't do this all on your own. Leadership, it's not about you, and it's not about what you can handle. It's not about what you can carry. It's not about everything that you can do. You have to rely on the Lord. You really do. Like, He's the one that's going to keep you going. He's the one who's going to show you what direction to go in. He's the one who's going to give you the wisdom and the peace and the strength that you need. And He's really the one that's going to be with you every step of the way. So you absolutely cannot do this on your own. And if you haven't already, I do definitely want to encourage you to just surrender whatever leadership role you're in or what you're stepping into to the Lord, and be consistent about asking Him to show you if that place is where you're meant to be. Because the truth is, like, some leadership roles are short lived and others you're in for a long time. And I do want to encourage you, just be consistent in praying over that role. Whatever leadership role that you have, be consistent about praying over it and asking God to help you. And also pray over the people that you are leading, because they are looking to you as a guide and as a leader, and they're expecting something from you, and they're probably, chances are, looking up to you, and they really see you as a mentor and as someone to even maybe strive to be like. So pray for them, and that's going to be also such a good way to connect with the people that you're leading, is to show them that you are willing to step in and intercede for them, and that you're understanding and you're not just this tyrant. Like, you're really doing life with them. That's so crucial, I think, is just showing the people that you're leading that you're in this with them. It's not about you telling them what to do or how to do things. It's really just about serving other people. That's what leadership is all about. It's not about a title, it's not about promotion, it's not about adding something to your Instagram bio or posting all about it on social media. It's really about the day-to-day things that you do in quiet, and the things that maybe you don't get acknowledgement for. You're not always going to get a pat on the back and a good job in leadership, but that's really not what it's about. Those times are nice, and like, everyone likes to feel acknowledged and feel like they're seen and they're heard, and that when they're working really hard, that it's appreciated. But I wouldn't walk around expecting it, because that's just the truth. Like, you will do things that completely go unseen and unnoticed, but it's not about that. And just because it's not seen by somebody else, that doesn't mean that it doesn't make an impact too. So, I mean, that's kind of all I got. I'm just talking for 40 minutes straight now, but that's really all I have for you today. I do really hope that something I shared today sunk in, and I hope that you received something that you can take with you and carry with you in whatever leadership position that you're in or even about to step into. This is just a little bit of what I've learned throughout the years. I've really learned so much more than I could probably ever put into words, but I'm so thankful for every position I've been in, every place that God's put me. I've learned so much, and I have so many people around me who have really taught me a lot and shared their wisdom with me. I'm so fortunate. I'm so lucky. You guys, I'm so grateful for every leadership role that I've been in. Like even something as seemingly like kind of silly as being like a yearbook editor in chief or a yearbook club president or dance captain or something like that. It might seem like superficial or like I was really young, so what could I possibly learned? But really all of these things that I've learned in every leadership role have carried me through and kept me going in the place that I'm at today. And it's really helped shape me into the person that I've become. Don't underestimate your leadership experience, whatever that looks like, really just get the most of it because it doesn't last forever. And yeah, it doesn't last forever. And you really do need to just take advantage of it while you're in it because every place that God has you, every role He puts you in, there is so much for you to learn. But that's all I have for you today. If you're not already connected with the podcast, make sure you do that. You can follow me on Apple Podcasts or Spotify Podcast. I am also on YouTube, as I mentioned earlier. And you can also find the Pour Over podcast on Instagram as well. And you can follow that to stay up to date with new episodes and behind the scenes looks. And even sometimes I'll post encouragement throughout the week and just really updates on everything going on with the podcast. But I just want to thank you so much for listening. And I really do wish you the best of luck in whatever leadership role that you're in. And I pray that something today spoke to you and that the Lord just continues to guide you in all that you do. But that's all I've got for you. Thank you so much for listening and tuning in and being a part of the Pop Fam. I love you guys, and I will see you next Tuesday.